God presides in the great assembly, he renders judgment among the gods. Psalm 82:1. The mystery of Psalm 82 lies in its reference to gods, in the plural, where the gods are interpreted as either human rulers or angelic beings, who are accountable to God. Essentially highlighting that even those with great power on earth must answer to a higher authority, and administer justice fairly, or face consequences. We must return to Egypt in the Moses era to uncover the mystery behind Psalm 82. In the ancient world, where myth and reality intertwined like serpents, Egypt stood as a testament to human achievement and divine pretension. The Nile, that great artery of life, carved its way through golden sands, creating a paradise in the desert that seemed to prove the gods' favor. This was no mere kingdom, it was the epicenter of power, wealth, and divine authority on earth. Great monuments pierced the sky, their shadows stretching across the desert like the fingers of gods. The pyramids and temples, built with mathematical precision that would baffle minds for millennia to come, stood as a testament to Egyptian claims of divine knowledge. Their very construction seemed to defy human limitations. The Nile's annual flooding came with such precise regularity that it appeared to dance to divine orchestration. 3 growing seasons, perfectly timed, brought forth abundance that filled granaries to overflowing. From their temples, priests charted the stars with unprecedented accuracy, predicted solar events, and maintained calendar systems so precise they would influence human timekeeping for millennia. Their medical knowledge seemed touched by divine wisdom, they could heal wounds, set bones, and create remedies that drew visitors from distant lands. This isolation preserved Egypt's wealth and culture, making it appear as a realm apart, a land where gods walked among men. In the heart of ancient Egypt, where the mighty Nile carved its serpentine path through golden sands, a darkness hung over the enslaved Hebrew people. Generations had passed since Joseph's time, and the memory of protection had been replaced by the brutal chains of oppression. Pharaoh, adorned in royal splendor, considered himself not merely a king, but a living god, untouchable, unquestionable, supreme. The Hebrew slaves bent under the scorching sun, their backs scarred by whips, their spirits crushed beneath the weight of impossible tasks. Brick after brick, monument after monument, they built Egypt's glory with their broken bodies. But something more horrific than labor awaited them, Pharaoh's most heinous decree. Every Hebrew boy born, the royal proclamation thundered, shall be drowned in the life-giving waters of the Nile. The river that had nurtured civilizations, would become a watery tomb for innocent infants. In this darkness, a child was born, hidden, protected, miraculous. His mother, defying royal decree, placed him in a small basket, and set him adrift on the very river meant to be his executioner. Divine irony would transform this potential moment of death into a moment of destiny. Pharaoh's own daughter discovered the child, a Hebrew infant nestled among the reeds. Against all odds, the boy would be raised in the royal court, learning the languages of power. Educated in the most advanced civilization of his time. Little did the Egyptians know that their god-king was nurturing the very instrument of his own downfall. Moses, raised in privilege, yet never forgetting his true heritage, would become God's thundering voice of judgment. When Moses confronted Pharaoh, it was more than a political negotiation. It was a cosmic battle of spiritual authorities. Each plague was a surgical strike against Egypt's pantheon, dismantling their most cherished beliefs about divine power. The 10 plagues that befell Egypt were not random acts of wrath but deliberate demonstrations of God's supremacy over the Egyptian gods. Each plague targeted specific deities, exposing their impotence and proving that they were mere creations, not creators. Here is the detailed account of each plague, the Egyptian gods it challenged, and the divine message it conveyed. The first plague was to turn Egyptian waters into blood. The life-giving waters of the Nile River turned to blood, killing the fish and making the water undrinkable. The river Nile, once a symbol of life and prosperity, became a source of death and despair. Targeted deities were Hapi, the god of the Nile, responsible for its annual flooding and fertility, and Khnum, the guardian of the Nile's source, believed to control its purity and flow, were the target. By turning the Nile to blood, God demonstrated his authority over the river that the Egyptians worshipped as sacred. Hapi and Khnum were powerless to restore the Nile, proving that they were false gods. The second plague was, when frogs swarmed out of the Nile, invading homes, streets, and even Egyptians' beds. These creatures overran the land and disrupted daily life. The targeted deity was Hecate, the frog-headed goddess of fertility and birth, believed to bring life and renewal. The overabundance of frogs mocked Hecate's role as a life-giver. Instead of bringing fertility, the frogs brought chaos, showing that Hecate had no power to control the creatures associated with her. The third plague was the attack of lice. Dust from the ground turned into lice, infesting people and animals alike. The Egyptians were covered in discomfort and humiliation. The targeted deity was Geb, the god of the earth, responsible for the soil and its fertility. The lice emerging from the dust challenged Geb's authority over the earth. The god of the soil could not prevent it from becoming a source of affliction, proving his impotence. The fourth plague was the swarms of flies that invaded Egypt, spreading disease and misery. The land was filled with the buzzing of these pests, and no one could escape their torment. The targeted deity was Khepri, the scarab-beetle god, associated with creation, rebirth, and movement of the sun. The flies, akin to Khepri's sacred scarabs, became a symbol of chaos rather than renewal. Khepri could not control the insects, revealing his inability to protect Egypt. The fifth plague was the death of livestock. All the livestock of the Egyptians, cattle, horses, donkeys, and sheep, died in a single day. The economy and food supply were devastated. The targeted deity was Hathor, the cow-headed goddess of love, joy, and protection. The death of livestock struck at the heart of Egyptian worship. Hathor, revered as protectors of animals, could not save their sacred creatures, proving their powerlessness. The sixth plague was of boils. Painful boils broke out on the skin of the Egyptians, afflicting both people and animals. The suffering was widespread and unbearable. The targeted deities were Sekhmet, the lion-headed goddess of war and healing, believed to control disease, and Isis, the goddess of medicine and magic, known for her healing powers. The boils demonstrated that Sekhmet and Isis had no power over health and disease. Their inability to heal the afflicted exposed their falsehood. The seventh plague was the hail mixed with fire rained down from the sky, destroying crops, trees, and property. The storm was unlike anything Egypt had ever seen. The targeted deity was Nut, the goddess of the sky, believed to control the heavens, and Osiris, the god of agriculture and fertility, responsible for the land's bounty. The hail and fire challenged Nut's control over the sky and Osiris's dominion over the land. Their inability to protect Egypt's crops and people revealed their futility. The eighth plague was the swarms of locusts descended upon Egypt, devouring every green plant left after the hail. The land was stripped bare, and famine loomed. The targeted deity was Seth, the god of storms, chaos, and the protector of crops. The locusts mocked Seth's role as a protector. Despite his association with chaos, he could not prevent the destruction of Egypt's remaining vegetation. The ninth plague was darkness. Thick darkness covered Egypt for 3 days, so intense that no one could see or move. The sun, the source of life, was blotted out. The targeted deity was Ra, the sun god, the most powerful deity in the Egyptian pantheon, believed to rule the heavens. The darkness directly challenged Ra's authority. The sun god, revered as the bringer of light and life, could not penetrate the darkness imposed by God, proving his inferiority. The 10th plague was the death of the firstborn. In the final and most devastating plague, the firstborn of every Egyptian family, from Pharaoh's son to the lowest servant, died in a single night. The wails of grief echoed throughout the land. The targeted deity was Pharaoh himself, as considered a living god, the embodiment of divine power on earth. The death of the firstborn struck at the heart of Egyptian divinity. Pharaoh, revered as a god, could not protect his own son or his people. This plague demonstrated God's ultimate authority over life, death, and everything else. This was not mere punishment. This was a profound theological statement: there is only one supreme God, and he alone determines justice. The Hebrews walked out of Egypt not just as freed slaves, but as witnesses to the most profound demonstration of divine power in human history. They carried with them a truth that would echo through millennia: no human authority, no matter how powerful, stands outside divine accountability. Psalm 82 would later crystallize this moment: God presides in the great assembly, he renders judgment among the gods. A reminder that true sovereignty belongs to one source alone.